I'm James, 42M, and I've been living in my current house for about 5 years now. It's a nice corner property with a big front lawn that faces a cul-de-sac where a lot of neighborhood kids like to play. I bought this house after my divorce, seeing it as a fresh start and a place where I could finally have some peace and quiet. You see, I grew up in a chaotic household with 5 siblings, and as the oldest, I was always responsible for keeping things in order. It left me with a deep appreciation for tranquility and order in my adult life. When I first moved in, the neighborhood seemed perfect. It was quiet during the day when I worked from home as a software developer, and the evenings were filled with the gentle sounds of birds and the occasional passing car. I spent countless hours meticulously planning and maintaining my lawn. It became my sanctuary, a place where I could unwind after a long day of coding and conference calls. At first, I didn't mind the occasional stray ball or frisbee landing on my lawn. I'd just toss it back and go about my day. I even enjoyed these brief interactions with the neighborhood kids. It reminded me of my own childhood, playing street hockey with my brothers and the other kids on our block. But over the past year, things have gotten out of hand. The kids, mostly between 8 to 12 years old, have started using my lawn as an extension of their playground. They run across it, play tag, and even set up impromptu soccer games. The constant noise and distraction right outside my home office window is driving me crazy. It's affecting my work, my sleep, and my overall well-being. I've tried talking to the kids politely, asking them to play elsewhere. I even shared stories about the community park where I used to play as a kid, hoping to inspire them to find a more suitable spot. But they just nodded and went right back to trampling my grass the next day. I've spoken to some of their parents too, but nothing seems to work. The parents just brush it off, saying things like, "Kids will be kids," or "It's just grass, it'll grow back." One dad, Mike, 39M, even had the audacity to tell me I should be grateful for the free entertainment. He doesn't understand that for me, it's not entertainment. It's a disruption of the peaceful life I've worked so hard to create. The situation reminds me of my childhood neighbor, Mr. Grayson. He was always yelling at us kids to stay off his lawn. I used to think he was just a grumpy old man, but now I find myself empathizing with him. Is this what getting older feels like? Am I turning into the neighborhood grouch? The final straw came last month. I had a crucial video call with a potential client, a contract that could have doubled my income for the year. As I was in the middle of my presentation, a group of kids started a loud game of tag right outside my window. Their shrieks and laughter drowned out my voice, and I could see the client's confused and annoyed expression. Needless to say, I didn't get the contract. After the call, I went outside to find that the kids had taken their game a step further. They had actually brought shovels and were digging holes in my lawn to set up a makeshift mini golf course. My carefully maintained grass, which I had nurtured for years, was being torn up like it was nothing. When I confronted them, they just laughed and ran off, leaving behind a pockmarked lawn that looked like it had been hit by mortar fire. That night, as I sat on my porch looking at the devastation, I felt a mix of anger and despair. This lawn wasn't just grass to me. It represented the order and peace I had craved all my life. It was a symbol of the home I had created for myself after my divorce, a place where I felt in control. And now, it felt like that was being taken away from me. That's when I decided to take matters into my own hands. I spent hours researching solutions online, considering everything from fences to security cameras. But then I came across an article about motion-activated sprinkler systems. It seemed perfect, a non-confrontational way to protect my property without causing any real harm. I hired a landscaping company to install an automatic sprinkler system around the perimeter of my lawn. But here's the twist. I had them install motion sensors that would trigger the sprinklers whenever someone steps on the grass. The landscaper, an older guy named Bill, gave me a knowing smile as he installed the system. "Had some trouble with neighborhood kids myself back in the day," he said. "This'll do the trick." The first day after the installation was both hilarious and vindicating. I watched from my window as unsuspecting kids ran onto my lawn, only to be met with a sudden spray of water. They squealed and ran off, looking completely confused. Word spread quickly, and soon the neighborhood kids were treating my lawn like it was lava, carefully avoiding it at all costs. I thought I'd solved the problem, but apparently I've only created a new one. Parents started showing up at my door, furious that their precious little angels got wet. My next-door neighbor, Karen, 38F, was particularly upset. She's always been a bit of a busybody, the self-appointed mayor of our little cul-de-sac. She accused me of being a grumpy old man who hates children and threatened to report me to the HOA for creating a hazardous environment. I tried to explain that I'm just protecting my property, but Karen wasn't having it. She started a campaign against me, telling other neighbors that I'm unstable and dangerous. Now I'm getting dirty looks whenever I step outside, and I've even found a few nasty notes in my mailbox. One of them read, "Go back to where you came from, lawn Nazi." It was childish and hurtful, reminding me of the bullies I dealt with in middle school. My wife, Sarah, 40F, thinks I might have gone too far. We met 2 years ago at a local farmer's market. She was selling homemade jams, and I was immediately charmed by her warm smile and easygoing nature. She's usually my rock, the voice of reason when I get too caught up in my own head. But this situation has her worried. She suggests we should have tried harder to reason with the parents or maybe put up a fence instead. But I don't see why I should have to fence off my own property just because other people can't control their kids. Last night, as we were getting ready for bed, Sarah said something that's been echoing in my mind. "James," she said, "I know this lawn means a lot to you, but is it worth turning our whole neighborhood against us? Is this the kind of environment we want to live in?" I didn't have an answer for her then, and I'm still struggling with it now. I don't think I'm the asshole here. It's my property, and I have the right to protect it. The sprinklers aren't hurting anyone. At worst, a few kids get a little wet. But now I'm being treated like the neighborhood villain. It's bringing back memories of being the outcast in school, always the one who preferred books to sports, never quite fitting in. So, Reddit, AITA, for installing this sprinkler system. Should I have found a different solution, or am I justified in protecting my property this way? I feel like I'm at a crossroads here, and I'm not sure which path to take. Update 1. Wow, I didn't expect this post to blow up like it did. Thanks for all your comments and suggestions. I've read through them all, and I want to give you an update on what's happened since my original post. First off, Karen made good on her threat to report me to the HOA. Last week, I received a formal letter from them stating that several complaints had been filed against me for my aggressive landscaping choices. They scheduled a hearing for next month to discuss the issue and potential consequences. The letter was cold and formal, reminding me of the divorce papers I received years ago. It left me with the same sinking feeling in my stomach. In preparation for the hearing, I decided to gather some evidence to support my case. I set up a couple of security cameras to record what was happening on my lawn when I wasn't watching. What I captured was pretty shocking. Not only were kids still trying to play on my lawn, although much less frequently due to the sprinklers, but I caught several adults deliberately setting off the sprinklers and then quickly running away. In one particularly infuriating clip, I saw Karen herself sneaking onto my property at night with a pair of gardening shears, attempting to cut the wires to the sprinkler system. Watching that footage brought back memories of my childhood bully, Tommy Hawkins. He used to destroy my science fair projects the night before the big day. Seeing Karen, a grown woman, engaging in such petty vandalism made me feel like that helpless kid all over again. I immediately reported this to the police. They took my statement and the video evidence, but warned me that since no significant damage was done, they might not be able to do much beyond giving Karen a warning. The officer, a young guy named Dave, seemed sympathetic. "Between you and me," he said, "I get it. I've got 2 kids of my own, and if they were tearing up someone's property, I'd want to know about it." The next day, I confronted Karen about what I'd seen. Instead of denying it, she flew into a rage, screaming about how I was destroying the community and robbing children of their childhood. She even had the audacity to blame me for her actions, saying I'd forced her to take matters into her own hands. Her face was red with anger, reminding me of my father's temper tantrums when I was a kid. I found myself instinctively backing away, my heart racing. Our argument attracted the attention of other neighbors, and soon we had a small crowd gathered on the sidewalk. To my surprise, not everyone was on Karen's side. My elderly neighbor, Mr. Thompson, 72, spoke up in my defense. He said he'd been bothered by the noise from the kids too, but had been too afraid of confrontation to say anything. "Back in my day," he said, his voice shaky but determined, "we respected other people's property. These kids today, they think they own the whole neighborhood." Another neighbor, Lisa, 35F, admitted that her son had been one of the kids playing on my lawn. She apologized for not taking my concerns seriously before and promised to have a serious talk with her son about respecting other people's property. Her sincerity touched me, reminding me of the rare occasions when my own mother would stand up for me against my siblings' teasing. However, there were still plenty of parents who sided with Karen. They accused me of being petty and overreacting. One dad, the same Mike who had dismissed my concerns earlier, even suggested that I should be grateful for the free lawn aeration the kids were providing by running around on my grass. His smug grin made my blood boil, but I managed to keep my cool. The whole situation has created a clear divide in the neighborhood. Some people have started avoiding me altogether, while others have reached out to offer support. Sarah is stressed about the whole situation and worried about how it might affect our standing in the community long term. Last night, she confessed that she's been having trouble sleeping, worried about potential retaliation from angry neighbors. I support you, James, she said, her voice thick with emotion, but I'm scared. What if they damage our car, or worse? Her fears aren't unfounded. I've been having nightmares about coming home to find our house vandalized or our garden destroyed. I'm standing my ground for now, but I'll admit, the constant tension is starting to wear on me. The HOA hearing is in 3 weeks, and I'm nervous about what might happen. I've started looking into legal options, just in case things escalate further. The whole situation reminds me of a case study we did in my business ethics class in college about a homeowner who was sued for protecting his property. I never thought I'd find myself in a similar situation. Yesterday, as I was mowing the lawn, a task that used to bring me joy but now fills me with dread, I overheard a group of kids whispering and pointing at me from across the street. One of them called me Mr. Sprinkler, and they all burst into giggles. It was a stark reminder of how this whole situation has changed my identity in the neighborhood. I've gone from being the quiet, hard-working guy who sometimes shared homemade cookies with the neighbors to being the subject of ridicule and gossip. I'll keep you updated on what happens at the hearing and any other developments. Again, thanks for all your support and advice. It's good to know I'm not alone in thinking that homeowners have a right to protect their property. But as the hearing approaches, I find myself wondering, at what cost? Is protecting my lawn worth all this stress and conflict? I don't have an answer yet, but I hope I'll find one soon. Update 2. Hey everyone, I'm back with another update, and things have taken an unexpected turn. The HOA hearing was yesterday, and it didn't go quite as I expected. I arrived at the community center where the meeting was held, my stomach in knots. The room was set up like a courtroom, with the HOA board members seated at a long table at the front. As I walked in, I could feel all eyes on me. It reminded me of the time I had to give a presentation in front of the whole school in 8th grade. The same nervous energy, the same feeling of being judged. I came prepared with my evidence, videos of the kids destroying my lawn, footage of Karen's attempted vandalism, and photos of the damage done to my property over the past year. As I set up my laptop to present, I noticed Karen and her supporters huddled together on one side of the room, whispering and shooting glares in my direction. The meeting started tense with the HOA president, a stern-looking woman named Margaret, calling everyone to order. She explained the purpose of the meeting and then invited me to present my case. As I started speaking, my voice shaky at first but growing stronger, I noticed a shift in the room. The HOA board members, who I expected to be hostile, actually seemed sympathetic to my situation. I showed them the progression of my lawn over the past year, from a well-manicured paradise to a trampled mess. I played the videos of kids repeatedly ignoring my requests to stay off the grass, and then the footage of adults deliberately setting off the sprinklers out of spite. When I showed Karen's nighttime escapade with the gardening shears, there was an audible gasp in the room. What really turned the tide, though, was when Mr. Thompson spoke up. He shared his own experiences with the noise and disruption and how it had been affecting his health. He even admitted to taking sleeping pills just to get some rest during the day. "I fought in Vietnam," he said, his voice cracking with emotion, "and I never thought I'd say this, but sometimes the noise from these kids is worse than the bombs." His testimony seemed to resonate with a lot of the older residents in the room. Then something unexpected happened. One of Karen's biggest supporters, a mom named Rachel, 36F, suddenly burst into tears. Through her sobs, she confessed that her son had been one of the main instigators of the lawn games. She admitted that she'd been too lenient with him and apologized for not taking my complaints seriously. "I was so focused on not being like my strict parents," she said, wiping her eyes, "that I went too far in the other direction." This confession seemed to open the floodgates. Other parents started speaking up, acknowledging that they'd turned a blind eye to their kids' behavior. Even Karen looked uncomfortable as the tide of public opinion began to turn. I caught her eye across the room, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of regret on her face. The HOA board called for a brief recess to discuss the situation. As we waited, the tension in the room was palpable. I found myself pacing back and forth, my mind racing with possible outcomes. Sarah squeezed my hand reassuringly, but I could see the worry in her eyes too. When they returned, they announced their decision. My sprinkler system could stay, but with a few modifications. They suggested I adjust the sensors to only activate during certain hours and to reduce the water pressure to make it less of a shock. They also proposed a new community initiative to create a designated play area for the neighborhood kids. They suggested converting an unused lot at the end of the street into a small park, complete with playground equipment and a proper soccer field. Karen tried to protest, but she was quickly shut down by other residents. The atmosphere in the room had completely changed, and suddenly, people were coming up to me to apologize and offer support. Mike, the dad who had been so dismissive before, approached me with a sheepish look on his face. "I was wrong," he said, extending his hand. "I'm sorry for not taking your concerns seriously." After the meeting, Sarah and I were approached by a group of parents who suggested we all work together on the new park project. They even offered to help repair the damage to our lawn as a gesture of goodwill. As we discussed plans for the park, I found myself feeling cautiously optimistic for the first time in months. I'm still processing everything that happened. While I'm relieved that I don't have to remove my sprinkler system, I'm a bit overwhelmed by this sudden shift in neighborhood dynamics. Sarah is thrilled about the potential for positive change and is already talking about hosting a neighborhood barbecue to help mend fences. I'll admit I'm cautiously optimistic, but a part of me is still wary. After all, actions speak louder than words, and I'll be keeping a close eye on how things develop from here. The memory of Karen with her gardening shears is still fresh in my mind, and I can't help but wonder if this newfound community spirit will last. As I sit on my porch, looking out at my lawn, still a bit worse for wear but slowly recovering, I find myself reflecting on this whole experience. It's been a roller coaster of emotions, from frustration and anger to hope and cautious optimism. I never expected a dispute over my lawn to turn into such a complex community issue. I'll update again if anything significant happens. For now, I'm trying to take things one day at a time, focusing on rebuilding my lawn and, hopefully, some of the neighborhood relationships too. Thanks again for all your support through this crazy situation. Update 3. It's been a couple of months since my last update, and I wanted to share how things have progressed in our neighborhood. The community park project is well underway. A committee was formed to oversee the development, and to my surprise, I was asked to join. At first, I was hesitant. The thought of working closely with the same people who had been my adversaries not too long ago made me uncomfortable. But Sarah encouraged me to give it a shot, reminding me that this could be a chance to reshape my role in the community. Working on the park has given me a chance to interact with my neighbors in a more positive way. I found common ground with people I never thought I'd get along with. Mike, the dad who used to dismiss my concerns, turned out to be quite knowledgeable about landscaping. We've spent hours discussing the best grass types for high-traffic areas, and I found myself actually enjoying his company. Even some of the kids who used to play on my lawn have been helping out, planting flowers and painting benches. There's a 10-year-old boy named Tommy who reminds me a lot of myself at that age. He's always full of questions about the plants and the sprinkler system. Last week, he asked if I could teach him how to properly mow a lawn. It was a surreal moment, realizing that the same kids I once saw as adversaries were now looking to me for guidance. Karen, however, has been noticeably absent from these community efforts. I heard through the grapevine that she's been talking about moving. Part of me feels a little guilty, wondering if I pushed things too far. But another part is relieved. The other day, I saw her loading boxes into a moving truck. Our eyes met for a moment, and she gave me a small, tight nod before turning away. It felt like the closing of a chapter. As for my lawn, it's looking better than ever. True to their word, several neighbors helped resod the damaged areas. Mr. Thompson even taught me some of his gardening tricks, and we've started having weekly chess matches on my porch. It turns out, he used to be a landscaper before he retired, and he's full of stories about the elaborate gardens he used to maintain. The sprinkler system is still in place, but I've barely had to use it. The kids seem to have developed a new respect for property boundaries. A few days ago, I actually saw a group of them scolding a newcomer who was about to cut across my lawn. It was a surreal moment, watching them enforce the very rules they used to break. Sarah and I did host that barbecue she wanted. Almost the entire neighborhood showed up, and it was nice. There were a few awkward moments, like when Rachel's son accidentally knocked over the punch bowl and froze, clearly expecting me to explode. But I just laughed it off and helped him clean up. The relief on his face was palpable. I'm not naive enough to think everything's perfect now. There are still some tensions, and I doubt I'll ever be the neighborhood's favorite person. Just yesterday, I overheard someone refer to me as Sprinkler James. Not exactly a term of endearment, but better than some of the names I was called before. This whole experience has been a roller coaster, and while I stand by my initial actions, I've learned a lot about community, communication, and compromise. Who knew a sprinkler system could lead to all this? As I sit here on my porch, watching the sun set over my now peaceful lawn, I can't help but reflect on how much has changed. The sound of kids playing in the distance doesn't fill me with dread anymore. Instead, it's become a pleasant background noise, a reminder of the community we're building. Sarah joins me on the porch, handing me a cold beer. "Penny for your thoughts?" she asks, settling into the chair next to mine. I take a sip, considering her question. "Just thinking about how different things are now," I reply. She smiles and takes my hand. "Different good?" she asks. I nod, squeezing her hand. Different good. Anyway, thanks for following along with this crazy story. Here's hoping for quieter, drier days ahead,